Today's webinar is going to be going over pretty much general navigation in RedTeam Flex. If anyone has questions throughout the session, do feel free to use the Q&A or even the chat feature within the webinar here. We do have someone who's going to be monitoring that. So let me go ahead and get my screen shared and we can hop into it. All right, so we are here in RedTeam Flex. We are in our training database, so if you see any kind of crazy numbers, just keep that in mind. But like I mentioned, general navigation is what we're going to be going over today. I like to start with the top toolbar that we see in black. And over on the right, there's a handful of icons I like to go over. First one being the plus sign, or really the create new sign. This one up here is always going to be here, and this is just a shortcut. You're going to see this icon all over RedTeam. This is where you're going to go to create a new whatever page you're currently on. Like I mentioned, you'll always have this shortcut up here, and you can click that. You'll be able to create a new contact, enter in an opportunity or a project, create a vendor invoice, or put in your time and expenses. The next icon over is going to be our releases icon. This one's just going to give you an update of any new updates that we come out with. So as we update the program, we come out with new releases, we're going to let you know what we changed, what we made better, kind of what happened there. When you come to the what's new page, we'll give you a little bullet point summary. If you want a more detailed explanation, do feel free to open the PDF document. The next link over is going to be the online plan room. Now, this is going to give you the link to your general online plan room. When you send this out to anybody, do feel free, or you do need to add the project number or include the project number because they will be asked that. Now, in a future webinar, we're going to go in depth into the plan room, talk over what's in there, how you can control that. But essentially, for now, we just need to know this is where we can give people outside of our company an inside look at our projects. So it might be a great link to give to your vendors, your project owner even. Really, like I said, anyone that you want to have take a look at some internal workings of the project. And you do have full control over the info that goes in there. And in a future webinar, we'll kind of dive deep into that. Next icon is going to be bounce emails. A little self-explanatory. RedTeam sends out emails. If some of those emails don't get delivered, we'll put them up here so you can always come in and check which emails were not able to get delivered. Now, I also have the transactions icon next on here. You may or may not have this one. This one is only going to be here if you have any errors in your transaction page in regards to your accounting software. So our training database is connected to QuickBooks Online. And if we have anything that didn't get sent over correctly to QuickBooks, we'll give you the little kind of error message up here. You'll be able to go view those. And then next item over is going to be action items. Action items in RedTeam are essentially just trackable tasks that you can assign to one another. If I were to click on this, we can see I have 2 action items on my profile here. Once I complete these items, I'll be able to click the little icon next to them to mark them as closed or as completed. And then I could also at the top create new action item from here. You can also make these project specific. And in that case, they're going to be stored in that project as well. So you'll kind of have a project to-do list there. These are meant to be sent kind of internally through different employees. You could send these externally. And in that case, it's really just going to be an email that the receiver will be getting. And then last item up here is going to be very top right corner, your name. If you click on your name, you have a handful of settings here. Kind of the 2 I want to look at. One I just want to point out is the profile page. If you want to go to your own profile, here's how you can get there. But I want to take a look at the Help Center, which is found on that page as well. This is going to be where all of our training videos are going to be listed. So we have a pretty extensive library of training videos in here. Feel free to come in and take a look at any of these. Anything you want to learn about Red Team, you'll be able to watch a video on. These are short form, typically between 5 to 10 minutes. There's a handful that are longer than that. But we have a pretty extensive library for you. Then on the topic of getting help from Red Team, we actually take a look at the opposite side of the page, that bottom left corner. We have a little chat bubble down here. And there's a couple things you can do from here I want to point out. One, you can actually chat with Red Team. We have a support team that is at your disposal. If you need any help, have any questions, do feel free to send them a message. Looks like right now they're replying in under 2 minutes. So you'll get a response. You'll be able to chat with somebody, work through any problems you're having. Directly below that, you can also search for help. This is going to be very similar to what we saw with the training videos, but instead of videos, this will be written articles. So if you would rather read something versus watch a video, here's where you want to be. For example, if I want to learn how to upload plans and specs, I can click on that there, and the article is going to pop up for me. I could also make this a larger screen, a smaller screen, whatever I want to do with it here. Those are the several different ways you can reach out and get help from Red Team. Now that is the top toolbar that I wanted to go over, but continuing through general navigation, we're actually going to take a look at the left side menus here. We're really just going to go down the list. I kind of want to talk about what you can do in each menu, where certain things are done, and really go through all that good stuff. So we'll go ahead and start off at the very top here, where we're on the company dashboard. When you first log into Red Team, this is where it's going to bring you, and it's going to give you some good kind of at a glance information about how the company's at, where's everything at. Now, I do want to note that these specific tiles are role specific, so don't feel like everybody in your company is going to be able to see accounts receivable and accounts payable, things like that. So these are role specific, so not everyone will see this. But really the two that I want to point out is going to be the inbox and the to-do. So inbox is going to be used for approving invoices. So in Red Team Flex, we have a approval system for invoices and expenses. If you are on that approval system, it's your turn to approve something. Here's where you're going to go to do so. And I can see there's 18 invoices that I currently need to take a look at and approve. And there's also 3 expenses that I need to approve as well. So I could click into those things and review the items, get those approved. Future session, we'll be going over invoicing and the approval systems. We will take a look at that then. But I wanted to point out where that whole kind of process gets started. And then the to-do list, I just like to point this one out because I think it gives some nice information. Are there any action items that need my attention? I currently have 2. Any submittals I need to take a look at? I'm all set there. There is an RFI that I need to go over. That's about everything on the dashboard here. We take a kind of step down. Like I said, we're just going to be going through this list here. Go into employees. Really, the first thing I want to point out here is going to be just the general look and feel of this page, because that's the same look and feel that really every Red Team menu is going to have. We're going to click on it, and it's going to bring us to an overview page, where up at the top, I have a few tabs where I can view the directory. So it's listing out all my employees here. Time, where I can view all timesheets, and expenses, where I can view all expense reports. Going over to the right, I do have a few icons over here I want to talk about. First one being search. A little self-explanatory. I can search any of this data. So instead of going through the 470 employees we have listed here, I could just search for a specific name. The plus sign, like I mentioned, you're going to see this one all over Red Team. This is where you'll create new. In this case, you'll be creating a new employee. So if you hire someone, you're making a new user, click the plus sign, fill out the required information, you can get that new employee in. The view icon, you're going to see this one pretty much on all pages as well. I like to call this the reports icon just because that's where all the reports are going to be. If you're ever wanting a report on the page that you're currently looking at, come to the view icon. That's going to be the majority of your reporting options. For example, in the employees page, if I click this, I have an employee overview report that I could run. Different pages will have different reports, obviously. But again, if you're looking for a report, come to this view icon. Next is going to be filter. This is where you can filter or sort the data that we're looking at here. Maybe I just want to look at all my superintendents right now. I could filter by role. There can be several different filter options in here, but if you're ever wanting to filter the data that you're looking for, come to this icon. Last icon on this page will be the other. If there's any other actions you can take other than the ones we just looked at, you would come to this icon. Here on the employees page, there is not. I don't have any other options here, so it's grayed out for me. But other pages, there might be. So come take a look if you're trying to do something that's not the things that we just talked about. Like I said, these icons are pretty standardized on almost every kind of overview page, really every page in RedTeam. So I wanted to definitely go over those. But now that we're in the employee section, I do want to point out, if I were to click on somebody's name, we'll just click on Jim up here, it'll bring me to their specific profile, where at the top, I can view time and expenses from Jim, just Jim's, as where the other one would have been all. Any equipment Jim has checked out, and then an expertise section, which is really where you can go in and kind of say what things is Jim good at? What kind of projects do we like him working on? Anything like that. I also have the edit button here. I could click edit if I need to change any info in here. Maybe his phone number changed or email, I could update that. Also, if this was my own profile, here's where I could come edit my profile, scroll down and change my password as well. So if you're looking to do that, you can do that from this page. And again, to get to your own profile, you just need to click on your name and go to profile. But that is about everything in the employee section. So we'll hop down once again and take a look at equipment. Now, in RedTeam Flex, you'll be able to track equipment that your company owns or is renting. We'll have separate categories for that. You can come in here, click the plus sign, add new equipment. Now, this can be anything from tools, heavy machinery, company trucks, generators, really anything that you want to track. And there's kind of two different ways you can track equipment in RedTeam. You can track maintenance of it. So if it's something like a company truck, you can come in, track its maintenance. You can click on the profile page, go to maintenance, add, hey, you got the oil change, tires rotated, be able to track any of that. What's the mileage at? So you'll have kind of service records of everything you've done to that vehicle. You'll also be able to track it in specific projects as well. So unlike kind of a company truck, which normally wouldn't be assigned to a specific project, maybe you have a generator, which is being put on a job site. You could come and click assign equipment, select that generator, select an employee for who's responsible for it, and then a job site. Where is it going to be used? That's going to tell the system that this generator is on the job site. And then when they go to fill out progress reports, there's a section there for equipment utilization. That piece of equipment will be listed there. So they'll be able to track its utilization within that progress report. And you can set how they track it, maybe by hours. How many hours did you use it? Miles, how many miles did you put on it today? However you want to track that utilization, they can enter that in, type in what they did with it, and that would be the daily utilization for it. Once that piece of equipment is off the job site, it's no longer there, it's no longer being used, kind of back at the warehouse waiting to go for the next job, you would come in and click return equipment, essentially saying what I just said, it's no longer going to be sitting on that job site. Then we will take a step down again from equipment and we'll take a look at companies. In RedTeam Flex, we split your companies into 3 different categories. We have vendors, customers, and third parties. Vendors are essentially anyone that you do business with that you'll be paying money out to. So your subcontractors, material suppliers, anybody like that. Customers will be your customers, the project owners, essentially. And then third party is reserved more for architects, engineers, people like that you work alongside with, but there isn't necessarily an exchange of money between the two. We'll click into each one of these. So I will take a look at vendors. And it's going to be very similar to what we saw with the equipment menu, the employee menu. It's going to bring us to an overview page where I can view all of our vendors here. Up at the top, I can view all of our invoices, payments made, all of our commitments, and any claims that we have. Again, I have the plus sign here, so I can add new vendors if I need to, run any new reports on them, filter. And then if I click on somebody's name, just go 100% reliable plumbing, it'll bring me to their profile, where I'd be able to view specific invoices from this vendor, payments we've made to this vendor, any commitments that we have with them, quotes, their current rating. Throughout using RedTeam, we're going to ask you to rate the vendors that you work with. We're going to compile that in here, give them a rating. Also, any blogs or claims that they've made. Now, from here, I can also click the edit button so I can change any information. Maybe they move or change phone numbers, whatever the case is. So I can change any profile info, but from the profile, we have a few more tabs down at the bottom. First one being contacts. This is essentially the people who work at this company that I deal with. If you need to add new contacts, you can come click add new contact and then get them set up. I believe they just need a name and an email. But like I said, this will be all of the employees for 100% reliable plumbing. In this case, everyone that we work with. Just going through some of these tabs. Next one is going to be credentials. Credentials are essentially anything that you require your vendor to have in order to do business with. Perhaps it's a W-9 or certain types of liability. You could come in here, click add new credential, select what that credential is. So like I mentioned, if it's a W-9, I could click that. And then fill out the required information, upload the form. They now have that W-9 on file. You can even make these credentials required in order to write a subcontract with. Essentially, you can edit the subcontract page. We'll take a look at that when we get down to the configuration menu. But you'll be able to say that a W-9 is required, and it will then kind of cross-reference this credential section when you're creating a subcontract and say, hey, do you have a W-9 on file? It'll tell you at that time. It'll still let you create the subcontract without having that credential on file, but it won't allow you to move forward with it. And there's a couple different options that you have there. Like I said, we'll take a look at that as well. But just note, you can make these required. Next is going to be the trades list. Now, trades are essentially cost codes. If I come in here and I click add trades, it's going to open up with my cost code list. This is where I'm saying, what cost codes does this vendor do? Now, what this is going to be used for is essentially searching during the request for quote process. So when you're sending out RFQs for plumbing, you can search your plumbing cost code, and then any vendor with that cost code in their trade list is going to pop up in your search results. And then you can select who you're going to send it to from there. But like I mentioned, it's going to be a way to kind of sort through and search your vendors when sending out requests for quotes. I do also want to say that RedTeam Flex does kind of automatically keep this up to date for you. if a vendor or if you interact with a vendor under a certain cost code, we'll add that cost code to their trade list. So if a vendor sends in a quote for masonry, you can enter that into RedTeam. RedTeam will automatically add masonry to their trade list. If you write a subcontract with a vendor that's not on their trade list, we'll put it there as well. So don't feel like you have to come in here and always keep this up to date. Have it set up initially, and then as your vendors do different work, we'll keep it up to date for you. The next tab over is going to be qualifications, which are going to be used the exact same way as trades do. It's going to be for searching during that quoting process. But instead of cost codes, qualifications are actually completely open-ended. You can create a qualification for anything and then come in here, add qualification, and apply that to those qualifying vendors. An example I saw of this recently was I had a client whose customer gave them a vendor list. They said, hey, I only want to work with these vendors on this job. Okay. He created them as a qualification and then went through that vendor list and added that customer's credential to it. That way, or qualification rather, that way, when he was quoting the job, he searched that qualification. He knew that he was only viewing customers that his vendor or vendors that his customer wanted to work with. And then next tab's over, pretty simple. We can view any events that we've had, interactions with this vendor. I could leave notes on their profile, and then also view any projects that they're active in. Then we'll hop down from vendors and take a look at customers. We're really going to see that exact same kind of look and feel. It'll bring us to an overview page. I can view invoices and payments. I can click the plus sign, create a new customer, click on a name, so ABC School District, to bring me to their profile page where I can view specific invoices. Really, the only thing different with customers that I want to talk about from vendors is going to be the facility tab down at the bottom. Facilities in RedTeam Flex is going to allow you to break down a customer really however you need to. For a larger customer that you do a lot of work with, you may want to break them down into facilities. Not every customer is going to need that. For the most part, they might just have a single facility that matches the name. That's completely fine. But like I mentioned, larger customer, you may want to break them down. The example I love to use for this is, so I'm located down in Orlando, Florida. One of the largest customers for the GC in this area would be Disney World. Disney World has, I think, 4 different theme parks, a handful of office buildings throughout Central Florida. Those may all be separate facilities. So as Disney World is our customer that we're doing work for, we're actually working at Animal Kingdom for this project. That might be its own facility. You could have another facility for Magic Kingdom. Really any of those kind of sub-customers or where that work is getting done. Any way you want to break down your customer, you'll be able to do so with facilities. So we'll hop down once more and take a look at third parties. And really, there's only one thing I like to talk about with third parties here. Other than that, everything else will be the same. We'll have an overview page. I click the plus sign to add new, click on a profile, click on a name rather to go to their profile. But really the one thing that's different I want to point out is kind of by default, I mentioned earlier, there's not necessarily an exchange of money between third parties. There isn't a way to receive an invoice from an architect. So 10,000 volts architecture here. However, if you're ever in a situation where you are needing to pay your architect, you can get that done pretty easily. Essentially, you need to add them to the vendor list. Now, you definitely do not need to go in and create a vendor as well, create another customer or another company for a company that's already in here. What you would actually want to do is come in here and click edit. And what we're going to ask on here is, what type of company is this? Is this a customer, a vendor, or a third party? So we can see this company is actually all three. They can be a customer, they can be a vendor, and they can be a third party. But if you need to pay your architects, they will be a third party. You would also want to have them selected as a vendor. It will essentially populate them on both lists. No need for double entry. RedTeam will treat them as a third party, as an architect, and as a vendor. Pretty easy way to take care of that if you need to pay an architect. And then hopping down from there is going to be contacts. So we were looking at companies before, where we were viewing everything based off of the companies that we work with. Contacts is going to be all the people in those companies. So essentially your Rolodex of everybody that you work with, all the different contacts from all your different companies. Moving down from companies and contacts, we're going to take a look at opportunities. Now, opportunities in RedTeam are essentially, I like to think of as a pre-project. You're really not bidding on it just yet. You're not working on that. It's something that's coming up, something that's in the future that you're really not sure. One, is this going to happen? How serious is the customer? And two, do we want to bid on this? Main point of this is really to gather information. So if that's where you are, you have something coming up in the future, it's not really a project, you're not doing pre-construction yet, that is the perfect time to create an opportunity. To make an opportunity, you'll come in, click the plus sign, fill out the required fields. Now, the fields that are required is actually very few because there may be only a couple things you know at this time. First option here is a campaign. Not required. I just like to talk about it because I think it's a neat feature. Think of this as a marketing campaign, essentially. Maybe, let's say you do a government project, and for whatever reason, you love doing government work. You want to do more of it. All right. You may want to come in and create a campaign for government work. Any opportunities that you have that are government projects, you can put under that campaign. What that's going to allow you to do is possibly at the end of the year, run a report on that campaign. All right, we had a push this year to do more government work. How did that work out for us? How many opportunities did we have? How many of those opportunities turned into projects? How much money did this make us? It'll give you a ton of information about all the opportunities listed under that campaign to kind of help you decide, all right, this was a good idea. We need to keep doing this. Or, you know, that was fun. Let's try to do something different next year. Kind of a neat feature I like I mentioned, not required. What is required is just going to be who the customer is, what facility for that customer is it under, who the contact is from the customer. We'll need to name the opportunity and select who the manager is, who's managing this. That's actually the only things that's required. There's a ton of other questions in here that I want to talk about, but those are the only ones that are required. I could put in any potential dates if we know what the bid date's going to be. The estimated opportunity value. I can also give a narrative, kind of what this project is about. And then as I scroll through, there's additional information here. This is also going to be referred to as additional scope details. This list is configurable. You can add items to this. So if there's questions on here that we aren't asking, you can add these questions in our configuration menu. This is the same list of questions that we'll see inside of a project as well. So you can scroll through here. If you know any of this at the time, get that typed in before going back up to the top, clicking save and creating your opportunity. Now we have a handful of opportunities in here, so I'm just going to go back and we'll take a look at one of the ones we have already. Let's take a look at our Orlando ER Med opportunity. Click on the name from the overview page, and it's going to bring you to that opportunity, where I have a profile page, essentially all those questions that we mentioned. As I learn new things about this opportunity, I can start filling this in. Maybe I learn the bid date. I could click the pencil icon, enter in what the bid date's going to be, and save that. as I start to learn things, I can add it in to the profile page. I can also start to build out the team list. So who is going to be working on this job? We split your teams into the different types of contacts. Service provider is internal employees. We'll have customer contacts, third party, vendors. So if you want to start building out who's going to be working on this, you absolutely can. I at least like to say for service providers, for internal employees, come in and add who's going to be working on this job. If this opportunity turns into a project, and same with the opportunity, being on the team list is what dictates who can see the job. So if somebody is not on the team list, they are not going to be able to see this project. So if someone's working on it, be sure to add them. As for the others, if you would like to, you can absolutely come in and add the vendors that you want working with. But RedTeam will also automatically add those as you interact with them. So if you were to send a request for quote to a vendor, we're going to add them to the team list. We're also going to have a calendar on here. Now, I won't spend too much time on this because this works really as any calendar ever does. You would click the date and time, select it, add an event, add more details, really put in that who, what, when, where. It's going to create a calendar event, essentially an upcoming meeting, perhaps. Really anything you want to put on your calendar for this opportunity, you can add here. Then moving over, we're going to have interactions. Now, when I come to interactions and I click the plus sign, I'm going to get two options: add an event and add an interaction. An event is actually what we just looked at. That's going to be a calendar event, something upcoming that we're planning for. Add an interaction is maybe something that's already happened, something out of the blue, perhaps. Maybe you ran into somebody at the grocery store, got a random phone call, whatever the case is, but you talk to somebody, you learn something, come in, create an interaction. You can log who did you speak to, what did they say, what did you learn, all that good information. Again, main point of the opportunities is gathering information. Maybe something you learned from this interaction relates to some info back on the profile page. I can log the interaction and then come update the profile page here. Main point is gathering information really to help you make the decision of, is this going to happen? Is the customer going to follow through with this? And do we want to bid on it? If both of those are a yes, once we make that decision, that's when I'd want to come back to this profile page and I can click convert to project. That's going to take all the information here in my opportunity and create a project for me. So I don't need to go enter a new project for something that I've already made an opportunity for. No need to double enter, convert to project. It'll create the project, and then we can start working through pre-construction. Back on the opportunity overview page, I do want to point out a couple things you can do from that. We do have a bids tab up here. This is going to help track any opportunities that have turned into projects. And there's a few things you can track from here. One, you can go to those projects and just see how it's going, but also throughout the bidding process, or really once the bidding process is done, rather, you can log in some information about it. The rank, spread, and bidders. Rank, essentially, where did we place on it? You know, if we weren't awarded the job, but we were the second choice, I could say we were rank number 2, second option there. Spread would be the difference of the highest bid versus the lowest bid. And then bidders is where you can log the number of people that bid on this job. So you do have some options of tracking your opportunities even once they've become projects. But that is about everything with opportunities. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if anyone has questions, do feel free to log them into the Q&A or even the chat. Moving on from opportunities, taking a step down is going to be projects. We're going to skip this one for today. In our next webinar, we're going to go over project creation and pre-construction. So really the next webinar and most of the ones after this are completely going to be inside that projects page. So we're just going to skip past that one for today. And we'll hop down to transactions. These are going to be financial transactions. What's going to come here is all of your vendor invoices, customer bills, employee expenses, and employee timesheets. So as you enter those into RedTeam, again, future webinars, we're going to cover how all of those are entered in. Here's where they're eventually going to go, kind of for a one screen view of all of those places. Now, depending on what accounting system you're using is dependent on how you're going to use this transaction page. If you're connected to one of our accounting systems, really regardless of which one it is, you're not going to get a ton of use out of this page just because the function here is kind of automated. Those financial transactions that I mentioned, if you're connected to something like QuickBooks or one of our Sage integrations, as you create those in the projects and RedTeam Flex, like I mentioned, they'll come here as well, but we're also going to automatically push those to your accounting software. Our training database specifically is hooked up to QuickBooks, so I'll kind of use that as an example. But as you create an invoice from a vendor, once it gets committed, we're going to push it over to QuickBooks where it can then get paid. That payment information will come back into RedTeam. So there's not going to be a ton of need to come into this transaction page. The only thing this will get used for with QuickBooks again is if something didn't go over to QuickBooks. If we had a transaction that had an error for whatever reason, I could come in here, view it, and would be able to see what that error is and try to get that fixed. Now, with our Sage integration, like to mention, you won't see the error message here. I believe it's just QuickBooks where it's going to show that. Again, future webinar, we're going to go kind of into each one of our accounting systems, giving a webinar over each of those. But if you're not connected to an accounting system, you will actually get a bit more utilization out of this page because this is where you can export your accounting information out of RedTeam. So you can still enter your invoices, your bills, your time and expenses into Flex. And let's say you're using QuickBooks Desktop, which Flex does not have an integration with. You'll be able to come in here. I would say filter your data. Maybe you want to do this weekly, monthly, but you can filter by a date range. So let's just say for the whole month of July, I want to run a report. I want to see all of our transactions from July. I could also do specific projects, specific transaction types, but we're just going to do everything from July. Click filter, and I'll be able to see all of our transactions here. Once again, we're linked up to QuickBooks, so I can see the little chain icon is saying that all of these have been linked. But if we're not using a financial system, this is where I can get this data out of here. From the view icon, I would have a couple different options for exporting data. One of them would be for QuickBooks Desktop. So if that's what I'm using, I could click the view icon, look at the reports, and I can run the desktop export. If I'm not using desktop, I'm using something different. I could use a different version of it. But essentially, it's going to give you a report with all this data that we can then either upload with the QuickBooks one. There's a direct upload to upload into QuickBooks Desktop, or with a different one, we'd be able to enter that information into our accounting system. So you can get it out of RedTeam into your actual accounting system. Again, if you have one of our integrations, that whole process is automated. You won't typically need to come into this menu that much. Then we will hop down once more, take a look at the configuration menu. Now, the configuration menu is essentially kind of your back end of the software. This is where all of your settings can be. Really anything that you need to control your system. Throughout training, or throughout the webinars rather, we're going to come into this page and kind of go through, show some different things in here. For example, for today, there was a couple things I want to talk about. One, we mentioned credentials when we were talking about vendors. And I said that you can make certain credentials required on your commitment forms. I want to show you exactly how to do that. Under projects, if you go to commitment forms, go to the item that you want to change. We want to change one of our subcontracts, for example. We'll take a look at our long form subcontract agreement. I'll click the tools icon and click edit. This is where I could change really anything about it, but we're talking about the credentials specifically. So I want to scroll down to the required credential field, where here is where I can set up what credentials are required. Looks like we require automobile liability, general liability, and a W-9. If I want to add anything to this list, I just need to click the drop down, select the credential from here, and then click add, and it will add it to the list. Now I have an option as to where it's going to stop me. So I did say earlier that it will kind of let you create the subcontract, but it won't let you move forward with it. It can either stop you from committing the subcontract or from executing the subcontract. You can choose where it's going to stop you if they don't have a credential on file. If you're unsure kind of which one to talk about, when we go through commitment creation, you'll definitely see the difference between committing and executing, so that can probably help make you make that decision. But going back from there, the other thing I wanted to mention, we took a look at opportunities and I showed that additional information when we were creating it. I mentioned that is the same information, same questions that we're going to ask on a project. Those are called additional scope details and can be found right under projects here. This is going to be all of those questions that we can type in. I can change any of the current ones or click the plus sign, ask a new question. Very easy to get asked, get in here. I can type in the name, essentially what's the question we're asking. And then the display order is the only other thing that's required. Essentially, what number, where on the list do you want it to show? But that is about everything in the configuration page I wanted to go over for today. Like I mentioned, future webinars, as we take a look at other things, we'll come back in here and show you where to configure those. We'll hop down to our last menu, which is going to be the apps page. This is where you can get RedTeam connected to any third-party apps. So for example, we have QuickBooks Online as our accounting system for this one. See, that's operational, but we do have a handful of other apps on here. So some other accounting systems that we connect to, Acumatica is a new one along with Sage Intacct, but we also connect to Sage 100 and Sage 300. Non-financial systems we connect to, BIM 360, if you use that, we have one there. Azure AD, that's going to give that single sign-on feature. I believe it's a Microsoft function. DocuSign, something we have an integration with. This will allow you to electronically sign documents from within RedTeam. We do also have an integration with FieldLens, one of our other software that we offer. It's really a field management system. LevelSet is another program that we integrate with. This is going to create lien law documents. As we go through future training, we'll see how RedTeam kind of handles lien law documents. We don't generate those. We really just give a place to store them. LevelSet does generate them, and you can integrate with RedTeam there. Also, PlanGrid, if you want to use PlanGrid drawing markups. Talked about QuickBooks, but QuickBooks Time, if you have a QuickBooks Online integration, you can connect to QuickBooks Time as well. And then Team Player is an app that we use as well. This will be essentially for your vendors and will allow them to upload invoices directly into RedTeam Flex from their Team Player app. So they don't need access to RedTeam. They just need to get Team Player and they'll be able to upload their invoices directly in here. So you don't need to enter them manually. That's really all of the apps. And that's really everything that I had for today's webinar, kind of the general navigation that I wanted to go through. The next Flex webinar that we're going to do, let me double check the date, because that is going to be, it looks like it's currently scheduled for September 7th. what's currently scheduled for. That one's going to go over project startup and pre-construction. That'll be our next Flex webinar. But like I mentioned, that was everything that I had planned for today. So if anyone has any questions, I'll hang on to the meeting for just a minute. But if not, we can kind of wrap it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this, found this very beneficial, and we will talk to you next time.